access to a greater amount of resources. The thing that's troublesome is, and as 9/11 I guess demonstrated in a large way, lone individuals can have the ability to inflict enormous damage. Sadly, even a country like New Zealand, with things like the Rugby World Cup, is not immune to that threat. It's not a bad idea to keep an eye on people that pose a threat. It's also obvious that other jurisdictions often have information about these individuals, that they're coming to your country, and it's not a bad idea that they share it with you. When they share it with you, they actually don't want it to be made public. How it was got, what they know, etc., etc. And I've had occasion to have demonstrated to my satisfaction that we have received information that was of risk to New Zealanders potentially, that other jurisdictions have provided us, and I think we're a safer country as a consequence.
You said earlier that the war on terror is being used in some quarters as an excuse to restrict civil liberties, and some see the United States as leading the charge on this with Guantanamo Bay, the domestic legislation. Should we be providing them with information to continue this path of restricting civil liberties?
Well, we haven't.
But we provide information about I'm not sure of the exact workings because I understand it's not publicly available, but we provide information about
but think about it. How could we possibly provide information that would have them adjusting their policies towards their own legislation, or how they treat people that they're holding in detention? What we are providing information about is, and we're receiving information about, are people that are assessed as a security risk. Now, what a country does with that security risk is up to them.
But do you believe that? I mean,
absolutely.
So if
someone was
China assesses a democracy activist as a security risk, should we provide information about their whereabouts so that China can deal with them as they see fit?
Well, that's actually the great thing about working with the liberal democracies, for want of a better word, like the US, like Canada, like the UK, like Australia, because basically, while we might argue around the margins, and in a lot of the US legislation I would argue with it, they are small arguments compared to the arguments we'd have, say, with how China approaches civil rights. I don't agree with that at all, but we're not actually providing them with the information. Funnily enough, a lot of people that are activists would actually provide them with information, say not the US. My view is it's a much smarter thing to be working with these countries that actually do have a fundamental respect for individual rights. And yes, I do want to know if someone's wandering down to New Zealand who is considered to be, quote, a security risk, that we get some information about it.
Do you think that, just to bring it back home, do you think that the, quote, terror raids in September, October last year, do you think the police action was justified, the way they approached that?
No.
What about it did you?
The whole thing. I didn't agree with the legislation and I opposed it, and I didn't agree with the approach that was used. I didn't make strident claims about that. That was my response when asked. I received a briefing on the day that they were going in, but I didn't think it was appropriate. I do not think the legislation is appropriate. That's why I voted against it.
What part of it did you not? You didn't think that they arrested the people, or was appropriate, or you didn't think they're using?
I think you can only arrest people for actually engaging in criminal activity.
Yeah.
I don't think suspecting someone of, quote, terrorism or conspiracy to commit a terrorist act is sufficient grounds. And so that was my problem. I also think that if you're going to arrest and hold people, you actually need to charge them. And so these are basic concepts of law and order that I uphold. And I believe that's why I object to, quote, this war on terror and the response to it. I'm fully accepting of the threat. I'm fully accepting of the need to do a proper response. But I should believe that we should do it within the bounds of what civil society stands for. If we don't, we're actually conceding the whole argument. And that's how I feel about it. That's what I believe about it. In fact, I think the police have all the powers they need. I just wish they'd bloody enforce the ones they have. Like, when kids are tagging, and people are getting attacked and are getting abused, and the police stand by. They don't need more powers. They actually need to enforce the laws that we've got.
ACT is in favour of abolishing the Māori seats at some point, I understand.
Sure.
So why stand candidates in this election?
I get asked this question all the time, and to be honest, I don't understand it.
Well, it appears
no, tell me
on the face of it. Okay, on the face of it, I have to admit, I haven't given it great thought. But on the face of it, it appears as a bit of a contradiction. You disagree with the existence of this thing, and yet you engage with it.
Well, let me put it this way. I'm not a fan of MMP. I voted against MMP.
Yeah.
But here I am. Do I then say because I'm not a fan of MMP and voted against it, I shouldn't stand in an MMP election?
Yeah.
I think it's important. This is my reasoning for it. I think it's important that people know where you stand on issues. Right?
Yeah.
I think it's important that they know whether you think it's a priority or not, and something that we should do urgently, and because can't do everything in life. I think there is a principle about the Maori seats that I totally oppose, and that is that it's race-based, and I oppose that. I also think it's bad for our democracy, and I think, funnily enough, it's bad for Maori people because it sort of quarantines them off. That's why the Royal Commission on MMP recommended the abolishment of the Maori seats.
But does it quarantine them off, or does it guarantee that they will have representation?
Well, come back to that argument, and I'll do that in a second, but I'll tell you my logic. So I'm not a fan of the Maori seats, and I think they should go.
Okay.
I don't believe that a government could sort of suddenly sweep to power with 51% of the vote and say we're going to get rid of the Maori seats. Because if you did that, you're going to have, people in 7 electorates up in arms saying, God, you got rid of our seats.
And 7 angry MPs.
Well, that's right. Well, angry MPs I'm used to. But, you think, well, what's the big game here, you see? Yeah. But it's important because it is a matter of principle. But then you say to yourself, well, okay, here I am. Sure, and we're a 1% party right now, a 0.5% party vote. But I think it's important, particularly in a country of 4 million people, that you engage across the board. So we stand people in as many seats as I can get candidates for. Why? Because I like the idea that when you are a Kiwi and you go along to a hall to hear the candidates speak, that you get to hear all the political parties and all the political debate as best you're able to. Not that there's a group that says, oh no, we're not going to turn up. So we'll turn up. I go to meetings where there's not one vote there. But I turn up because I think it's important to engage and to understand. So, yes, there's a question about the seats. Yes, there's a question about whether it's a priority. And then there's a question of whether you should stand. And I think, well, of course, because in a democracy, people want to hear your views. They want to see your candidates. If I can find good candidates in the Maori seats, of course I'd stand them, just like I'd stand a good candidate against Helen Clark.
And you've got 7 good candidates?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Okay.
But I was asked about the aspiration, and I said, yeah, I'm keen to stand candidates if I can get good candidates.
Like you said earlier, ex-politicians don't shy away from criticising things they think deserve criticising. I think have criticised the behaviour of China in the past, Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe. It's 60 years since the creation of Israel. Do you think that the situation of Palestinians has kind of slipped from the radar in New Zealand politics? Do you think it's too far away to be relevant? Or, the Israeli government continues to build settlements outside the law.
I'm a supporter of Israel, so let's get this quite clear. And
it's not really a question of being a supporter.
No, but just let just so you know, again, I'm not prepared to shy away from it. I'm a supporter of Israel, and I'm a supporter of Israel for this reason. It's an emotional thing in part because I went there when I was a young man, and I thought this is amazing. Here you have a liberal democracy. You have this little place, and I found myself able to speak and say what I liked, and people were able to move freely and vote for a government, and it was capitalist and prosperous and going ahead. And around it, were all these countries, some of which I visited too, that just their stated policy was to obliterate this country. And I thought, this country is so small. I mean, these are big countries geographically, and their policy is to obliterate it.